I'm Rosie Perez, Senior Vice President for Mission Integration for Providence St. Joseph Health, and I'm here today with Christian Hosoi talking about chemical dependency and programs that Providence St. Joseph has to be able to help people that are struggling with drug addiction.
Yes, I'm really fortunate to be here. It's by the grace of God, and just being able to share my story and my testimony with you guys is what my life is made for, and I'm just thankful that I'm here to be able to share that with you. Well, it's definitely peer pressure. I think, everyone wants to grow up faster than they should, especially when you're in a culture like skateboarding, or you want to be the best at something, because to be the best means you have to advance. So, me as a young child, 8 years old, I think 7, 8, I wanted to be Bruce Lee, and I was going to be the best fighter in the world. I read all his books, watched all his movies by the time I was 8, and I was going to be the martial artist king. I was going to take over the world. And so when I got introduced to skateboarding, it was Tony Alva, Jay Adams, Shogo Kubo. These guys became my idols, and they were rebels. They were kind of like your outcasts, because skateboarding was still forming itself. Vertical skateboarding just came in the late 70s, and I started in 77, met these guys in 78. My dad managed the skate park. They became my big brothers, raised me underneath their wing in Venice, in Marina Del Rey Skate Park. Venice, Beach, California, Santa Monica was the stomping grounds, and I wanted to fit in. And I think that the peer pressures for a kid who was 10 years old wanting to be like them, what were their personalities like? Well, they smoked weed, they drank beer, they chased girls, they quit school, they jumped over fences to skate backyard swimming pools, and I was like, that's me. I'm gonna be that. What did I do? I started smoking marijuana at 10 years old. By 12, I was doing acid. 13, I was doing mushrooms, and by 14, I was doing cocaine and ecstasy at 15, when it was like legal over the counters at clubs. I was going to clubs at like 14 years old in Hollywood. I grew up in Hollywood, lived in Hollywood, went to school in Venice. Everything on a silver platter, and I can choose. And so I chose those things myself, and I believe that everyone goes through that. The first time that I used drugs was probably at the age of maybe 7, just smoking marijuana, or drinking alcohol.
7 years old. I'm looking at my 7-year-old little nephew.
Well, when your
playing.
parents are like, hippies and they're artists. My dad was going to art school, graduated Berkeley with his master's degree in fine art. My mom's a secretary in Beverly Hills, and I'm in the middle of that. We're in art studio. I'm growing up in art lofts in downtown LA, going to art gallery parties. He's a musician playing blues, and I'm just this little kid eating all the food off the tables, and me and my friends are just stealing the champagne off the top of the thing, drinking it underneath the tables like at 7, 8 years old. I mean, so when you see your parents, they're all smoking marijuana, you're just like, hey, we want to do that too. And they're like, you know what, no, you're too young, and all of a sudden there's like a little roach laying around, and we as kids are so curious, that we're like, if they like it, if they're all having a good time, we're gonna have one too. And then we'd go and we'd smoke it, and we'd cough, and we'd go, oh, that was crazy. And we weren't getting really high because we didn't do very much, but we were sitting there going, wow, that was thrilling, and fast forward to being a little older, now going to a private school in LA, there's all these kids, and now they're older, 12 years old, and I'm 10, they're skateboarders, and I'm skateboarding now, and they're like, we're gonna go smoke weed around the corner. Now I'm smoking weed with the big boys and feeling like this is what being grown up is about. I think that, in your mind, you think that you're invincible, and that, as long as you don't OD, and go to a hospital, you have it under control. And so for me, I just thought, I did drugs since I was 10. And hard drugs. Done hundreds of hits of acid. I don't know how much mushrooms, did everything under the sun, tried heroin for a while. I mean, I shot speed, for a while, trying to figure it out. And I was like, man, I have to wear a long sleeve shirt now and I got to go skateboarding. I was like, no, this isn't working for me. And so there was all these things that was like happening, trying to figure it out. But in my mind, I was thinking, you know what? I'm just playing around. This is fun. And I think it's the biggest lie that, that you have when you're trying to find yourself, because you're covering up pain, you're covering up rejection, you're covering up responsibility, at the end, I even had a son, that I would take with me, to wherever I went, and I wasn't thinking, I'm responsible. God gave me a gift that I'm to steward over and take care of. I was like still worried about me. And I think that's what drugs do after a while. The psychosis of it gets you thinking you're fine. Yeah, when your name's Christian Hosoi, everyone kind of idolized you as a kid. Now I'm in my 20s, coming up to my 30s. People were just not going to tell me anything. I was a powerful force of personality. And now I look back and I'm like, I get it. I see why it's hard to speak to people who have their mindset. Like, how can I tell him that he's not doing good? He's just going to come up with a story, and the next thing you know, he's going to talk me out of it. And I did that to all my friends. But, I think that, when all lines are cut, when you realize, I realized where I was at. Family first, friends, your occupation, and then passion and dreams and hobbies, and then your partying and, lifestyle comes after that. Well, my list, that's the list. My list turned upside down, and it was partying, then it was passion, occupation, and then it was like friends, then family at the bottom. Because there's so much guilt and there's so much shame going on, especially if you've grown up in a decent home. And a lot of times you don't even have to be in a decent home. You're just a good person and you know better. And I think that that's where people tend to, not see it coming. I didn't even see it coming. I thought I bet $1 million that I'd never go to prison my whole life, because I didn't even steal a piece of gum, because I had the money. And if I didn't have the money, I'd borrow the money, because I didn't think that it was the right thing to do. So was I thinking, I'm harming myself? No, I was only harming myself, not other people. So I didn't think about it. Well, we just need to get up and do it. I think that that's really, the most important thing, that there is a place, and if there's not a place, what are they going to do? They're going to go back to what they're used to, where their comfort zone is. And if there's no one, to give them hope, there's not a providence. There's not a beacon of light that they can see from a distance, because there's people out there in the street right now. There's people that are in homes. There's people that are in businesses. There's CEOs that are stuck in a rut of complete and total dependency. And if there's no one saying, hey, we're here for you, well, then there's no option. I tell people all the time, I'm going to be 18 years sober this January. And they're like, how'd you do it? I'm like, well, it's a relationship with Jesus that transformed my life. And then now, what do? Well, I love going to church. I love hanging out with believers. I love reading the Word. I love to be in prayer. I love to have an accountability group. I love sharing my story at groups. I'm like now being used. There's a purpose for all this junk and all this mess up. All my mess turned into a message.
Christian, this is, you have this platform, and people have looked at you as an idol and as a hero for many different things, and And if you could, turn and just share, one thing, a couple of things with someone that is thinking about trying drugs or going down the road that you went down, what would you say to them? What comes to mind?
Well, what I would say to you if you're watching and you're, even before you start and you're thinking about it, well, you have the example. I'm the example of what is at the end of that road, and it's destruction, it's, a lot of heartache and pain, and you don't want to go down that road. Then if you're in it and you're doing drugs, you know already that there's nothing good about it because you're in heartache and pain. Your relationships are being broken, and you're dependent upon something that's depleting you of your finances, and it's weighing on you physically and mentally and even spiritually. And those that are at rock bottom, you know what? There's hope. Don't throw the towel in. Don't quit. You know what? I'm an example that you can turn things around. I got a second chance, and I took it, and I'm not letting go of it. And I encourage you right now that you should take that second chance, because God has a plan for your life. And it's to not only live a good life, but also be an example of hope to other people, that there is a second chance. And as I'm paying it forward, is what God has done in my life, you can do the same. And so for me, it's always, you need to open up your heart and allow God to come into your life, to have control, to be open to the plans that He has for you. And I always tell people that, it's about giving your life to Jesus Christ first and foremost.
Christian, I'm wondering, I'm thinking about what people can do to get involved. I'm trying to think about ways, if people not only been called to, maybe if they're dealing with this chemical dependency issue, that's one thing, but then there's others that are just being moved and touched and saying, I got to do something. I got to reach out, and I got to help, whoever is out there. How can people get involved?
Well, I think it's come to Providence and ask where they can, fill a position, and even come to the, sanctuary church and serve. I think that those are the ground level where you get connected to a group or a company like Providence that is there to make a difference. And when you start serving, you end up finding out what your skill set is, and you understand where you're good at, and you have strengths. You have strengths that I don't have. I have strengths that you don't have. And people find that out in serving. You don't find that out in an application. You don't look at something and go, oh, I'm going to be a guitar player. Oh, no, I'm going to be a singer. You get up, you start singing, and you're like, well, maybe I'm better at drumming. You know what I mean? And people really discover what they're good at. Some people are good at speaking with people. Others are good at doing the labor to make sure that the ones that are speaking to them have all the needs that they have to be able to facilitate the need of the people. And I think that that's something that, is vital to discovering your purpose in life and how you can participate in what you're doing and what I'm doing and what God's doing, because really it is about looking to see where God's at work and joining in with it, and it's beautiful once you start participating, because you actually see the effects of it too. You actually see the results of your efforts, and then it's gratifying, to yourself, and it's satisfying, and to God it's just beautiful. He sees you as a child that understands, the value that you have. If people were to sign up and get involved, they discover where their strengths are, and they can make a huge difference. Across the board, from the top to the bottom, there's dependency issues. And where, do these people find, help? Does Providence offer, help for all those categories? The young, because we know young people have a high rate of dependency issues with Oxycontin, with heroin now in schools. A lot of kids are committing suicide, they're dying. Like, I've done so many funerals, and now you have people even who are running businesses and even doctors that are having, dependency issues. Where can these people get help?
We have programs within our organization. I'm thinking about Providence Little Company of Mary that's had a recovery center for over 30 years, and they have been providing all kinds of programs to be able to help those that are dealing with chemical dependency. I think a lot of people, when they think about, someone, having a substance abuse issue, I think they think about, oh, they just need to go to detox, they're in detox, that's the first thing that people think about. And yes, the Recovery Center, offers those services, but then they offer so much more. They offer, this comprehensive assessment, just to be able to provide this continuum of care, a lot of the wraparound services that people need. And that, yes, some people may need to detox, but there's a way to be able to do that. A medical detox, and sometimes it's inpatient, they need to be admitted to a hospital to be able to do that. Sometimes, being in an outpatient might work best for someone. You're talking about, maybe someone that has a professional life, maybe, their situation is such that they could deal with it on an outpatient basis. And so, this is where an assessment comes in. They also do a history and physical because, a lot of people that are dealing with substance abuse and chemical dependency, they also have, other issues going on with them. Maybe they have other health issues, maybe they're diabetic, maybe they have some heart issues, and so they need to be able to look at the whole picture, be able to figure out what's best for that person, be able to say, this is our recommendation for you, and, maybe it's medication, maybe it's support groups, maybe it's detox, maybe it's being in a hospital for a period of time, maybe it's just in an outpatient, and then, what to do with the family members and significant others that, have decided to surround that person and offer assistance. They need assistance too in how to deal with everything. So, we're very proud that we're able to provide, a whole spectrum of services, what we refer to as a continuum of care. And they're able to address everything. I mean, alcohol, marijuana, amphetamines, methamphetamines, opioids, you hear that's hitting the headlines now, right? That's all, every time you pick up the newspaper, every time you watch the news, people are being devastated. Communities are being devastated by opioid epidemic and crisis, We hear that from our caregivers now that, people are just being brought in with overdose from opioids. And it's just, something that's unbelievable. And I think in a lot of communities, they're in crisis mode. So we're glad that we're able to have, programs and facilities or hospitals or clinics to be able to offer assistance and reach out to people. And even if they have that OD and they come in, then there's follow-up services. We have social services. We have the aftercare, to be able to talk to people and see if they're ready to be open to, getting more services from us that's going to help them and get them healthier and get them on a road of, wellness and wholeness. Christian, in hearing your story, I would say you were a perfect storm. When we talk about high risk, research shows that, young men, are more susceptible to chemical dependency. Your age, you started at 10. The brain is still developing, so there's, brain chemistry, brain development, that plays a role, genetic. I think also, environment, you talked about this, they're partying all the time, being with an older crowd that maybe wasn't the best influence, peer pressure, you talked about that, that's another high risk. I think what people, are dealing with now that they didn't so much back then, social media. People are always on the Instagram, on the Twitter, on Facebook, and we have been able to survey teenagers that say that their feed is just showing all of this partying and drugs and smoking marijuana and drinking, and it's just, being reinforced to them that that's the norm. And I think, as hearing your story, you exhibited all of those high risks that would put someone easily down a path of substance abuse and chemical dependency.
I was searching for love my whole life. I searched for it in money, I searched for it in fame, I searched for it in family, I searched for it in friends, I searched for it in girls, I searched for it in drugs, and I couldn't find true love. And I finally got into a prison cell, and everything was cut. And I was like, what happened to my life? Why me? And I found God's love. And that's when I found true love.